Speaking yesterday, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Mr. Ndlozi, says while he supports the call for the removal of colonial statues, he is against their vandalism. To date, over 5 statues have been damaged, and the EFF claimed responsibility for the destruction of these monuments. The Freedom Front Plus has laid charges against the economic freedom fighters for this. Now, today we are joined by the EFF's national spokesperson, Ndlozi, who unfortunately got his times mixed up yesterday and joins us today in our studio in Parliament. Good morning to you, Mr. Ndlozi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the viewers.
Mr. Ndlozi, what is your response to the general call that what you're engaging in by vandalizing statues is thuggery?
Look, I think that we need to put on record that there's been misleading media reports around the involvement, as it were, of the economic freedom fighters. What we've taken responsibility for is the demonstrations that happened at the Paul Kruger in Church Square in Pretoria. And to that extent, we are in principle in support of all other protests and demonstrations happening across the country that the colonial and apartheid statues must fall. We do this because we think that it's critical to take steps for the reorganization of our public spaces in light of a much more inclusive society, but also on the basis of our post-apartheid democratic values. These statues are offensive and they are long overdue.
Yes, they are offensive indeed. So you say you've not vandalized any statues as the EFF. You now distance yourself from this. Is that accurate?
No. What we're saying is that we are aware that, all the statues that have been vandalized, but we're also aware that, in particular, the Church Square statue, that there were vandalisms, and we hear that EFF members were involved. In principle, we support the protests that have occurred and the calls for these statues to be removed. If our members have been involved, of course, we are all willing to come out and take that responsibility, but we are still trying to find out exactly what happened. But the principled matter here that I think it's critical for us not to be diverted by is that these statues must go, and they've had they are long overdue. They've had their share in society, and they are long overdue. They shouldn't be there in the first place 21 years after democracy.
The issue at hand is transformation. I want to ask you a question. Throughout history, the humanity, wherever colonizers have gone, whether it's South America with the Mayans, whether it's North America with the Red Indians there, Australia with the Aborigines, those in power have always tried to diminish the history. What makes your protest different than trying to wipe the history of a certain group off the face of the South African kaleidoscope of history?
Yeah, your question is fundamentally wrong. In fact, it misreads the entire narrative of colonization. The government that stands in South Africa is not a colonial government. It's a post-colonial government.
The government didn't vandalize the statues, Mr. Ndlozi. The government of the day did not vandalize the statues. It's your organization, and you've admitted to this. I'm asking you, what is different when you try and diminish the history of others than what we have seen happen in the past, when our own people have suffered because our history has been diminished, and try to actually write our history out of the record books? What is different when you try and do this kind of thing?
Yeah, look, if you gave me a chance, don't jump a bit, because I'm trying to demonstrate the intellectual bankruptcy of your question. And it's as follows. The history that is being disrupted here is not a progressive history. If you put the statue of Hitler at the middle of Tel Aviv, I'm sure that the Jewish people across the world would be offended. That's what we're talking about here. It's a non-question at all as to the removal of these statues. It's not a removal of history. Statues represent the celebration, the commemoration, and the meaning of specific systems and governments. They represent the pride of the identity of that particular government or the people to whom those public spaces have been declared. And therefore, Paul Kruger, Cecil Rhodes, Jan van Riebeeck are, by both our law and United Nations law, people who have presided over crimes against humanity. To that extent, they are guilty under our law, under international law, and they shouldn't have to be in the public spaces which are about
Mr. Ndlozi,
the pride, identity, and values.
Mr. Ndlozi, sir, all over the world, there are statues that polarize. That is the nature of statues. It's the nature of history. There are polarizing figures in every city in the world. In Washington, D.C., you have Albert Pike, who was a Confederate general who stands outside the White House, for instance. Statues, by their nature and their history, will always polarize. What divides a nation is when you vandalize and you go about trying to diminish the culture and the history of people.
Yeah, I have no doubt that I look down with disgust and I do despise the history and the culture of apartheid. Make no apology for that, and I don't think any South African should make an apology for despising, for looking with disgust at a culture of superiority, at a culture of racial segregation, at a culture of colonization. We make no apology for that.
We're not talking about apartheid, culture, mister. We're not talking about apartheid now. We're not talking about... No, you listen. You listen. We're not talking about apartheid.
We are talking about apartheid.
No, we're not.
We're talking about colonial.
We're not talking about apartheid. We're not talking about apartheid.
That's what we're talking
we're
about.
Not talking about apartheid. You would like to talk about apartheid, sir.
Apartheid statues. Yeah,
you would like to talk about apartheid. We're talking about vandalizing and diminishing people's history all over the world, where groups try to diminish each other's history. Genocide follows, Mr. Ndlozi.
I don't think you understand.
No, you don't understand, Mr. Ndlozi. You don't understand, unfortunately. I'm not your man, Mr. Ndlozi.
I'm saying to you, if the students in UCT take proof,
you have hijacked the students. You have hijacked the student protest. That wasn't even your own, Mr. Ndlozi.
Of what Cecil John Rhodes represent.
You have hijacked the student protest, Mr. Ndlozi.
Paint and put it. No.
You've hijacked the student protest. It wasn't your protest.
It's not a hijack.
You've hijacked it, yes.
You've
mimicked a student protest. You've jumped on the bandwagon and you try to politicize this.
Are you going to allow me to speak? Are you going to allow me to speak?
Actually, I'm not going to allow you to speak anymore, Mr. Ndlozi, because we can't have a conversation. Let's move on. That's the spokesperson for the EFF, Mr. Ndlozi.